while I wait for paint to dry on the Predictor I've been working on, I figure might as well finish detailing this chassis, which requires me to remove the CRT so I can get down in here on all this goodness. So I'm working on taking this stuff apart, thoroughly documenting everything, taking a lot of photographs. I just took the ion trap magnet off, which is not the typical kind I'm used to seeing, which is more like this, with one or two magnets and something that kind of clips on, often with a spring or sometimes a screw you can tighten down. But this just has these flanges of copper, and you slide it on like so. Ideally, I'll put everything back to exactly how it was, with the 12L p4 facing directly out to this side, and it looks like the gun elements are not completely level, just slightly turned. Even if I get it off a little bit, yeah, I can manipulate things and get the brightest picture. Boy, that is baked. That is so baked. That is crazy. But I'm going to keep going with it, because after rejuvenating it, blasting it, it's got a watchable image, so why not just keep driving it into the ground? And after all, it's the one it came with. I did look up the company history, and it doesn't look like Stuart Warner was ever involved with Majestic. But the company definitely had a rocky history, and things really went downhill around 49-50, and by 54 they were completely gone. So who knows? This could be the original CRT, it might not be, I don't know. Also, this was curious, 12-inch written on here. The Sam's info talks about a 16 GP4 being installed on this, and on the photograph on the cover, yeah, I guess that would be a 16-inch. You can see they use this chassis in a whole bunch of models, and I'm going to guess the 17 models are 17-inch. Maybe the early 17-inch rectangulars, which came out around 1950. So, the company may not have been very successful with making TVs, but they tried, and they produced a bunch of different models, apparently. That definitely didn't make very many or sell very many. So, with that out of the way, I should be able to loosen up that band and pop this off and take the whole CRT out from the front. And there's just a few screws down here, and I can take this whole thing off, and I can get all that corrosion out of there. And there was that one tube that was hiding on me that I forgot to check early on, which is a power transformer. I'm not going to disconnect it. That's nuts. But we'll try to get these screws out, throw them in some rust remover, and clean up around the edge. If I take these bolts off, if there's enough slack, I can lift it up a little bit, put some shims under it, and get the rust remover going on that, which just leaves the back. Definitely want to preserve this label. I have no idea what used to be there. I'll have to go back and watch early videos. I can't remember when I first got this, if there was a label there or not. That might have fallen off. I'll see about removing some of this. Odd that there's corrosion just around in these areas. I wonder if there were labels here or something. Or why would, there's a vertical surface, why would moisture have just clung in these areas and on these screws? I could see maybe this cloth retained some moisture, maybe from this line cord. I don't know. That's the screw I was adjusting to set the horizontal frequency, and that is a horizontal drive trimmer cap in there. Interesting construction. It wasn't a big company, it wasn't a well-known company. They didn't make a lot of these, and often when that's the case, the chassis are pretty shoddy. But this is pretty well made. This must have cost some money. This is a pretty heavy gauge steel. Unusual construction, but it's solid. and they didn't really use cheap components on it. I have no idea what these sets might have sold for. That's a lot better. I'm going to use some clean water, wipe up any CLR residue, and then throw on a bit of this T9 to prevent any corrosion from returning, at least for a while, which just leaves tackling this guy. Alrighty, all the corrosion has been removed from everything. Now I get to put it all back together. Luckily I took, no, not luckily, I planned ahead and took lots of reference photos, and of course I have the videos I've taken, and I've kept all the components nearby, so I don't think it'll be too difficult to manage. Both adapter caps have been installed and wired up, and now I've been going over and double checking on my work, checking for any out of spec resistors, anything I might have overlooked, and I did find something I overlooked. What is this? This is where the AC line comes in. It goes to this terminal strip that's both riveted and soldered to the chassis, and what do we have? Two ceramic caps going from either side of the AC line to the chassis. Those should be type Y rated caps, also known as safety caps. I don't know what these are. They're just green. They don't have values, they don't have labels. But let's see if the schematic can shed some light on that. Yes, they are 5,000 picofarad caps. So those are coming out, and those are getting replaced with the proper type of safety cap. And while I'm at it, I'm going to undo these connections and put a new grommet in there. The one that is there is become rock hard and slipped out of its position. Also, I want to check what fuse is in here. After seeing that big hank of solder wrapped around the, which should have been a 1/4 flyback fuse. Who knows? Maybe there's a 20 amp fuse shoved in there, or a nail or something. In order to work on the AC line input area, I flipped the chassis 180 and took off the opposite side panel. So this is our first look at the other side of the chassis, fully revealed. While doing so, I discovered some corrosion a little bit heavier than the other surface corrosion. So to remove that, I am using this Rust-Oleum rust stripper. And I'm sad to say this has been discontinued for a few years now. I've shown this in the past. Some of you have asked me where I got it. You can't get it anymore. It was discontinued a while ago. And this is my final jug. It's only got about 1/3 left in it. This is liquid blend of phosphoric and hydrochloric acid. So unlike navel jelly, it doesn't have that pink goo that you need to clean up. This is just a thick liquid, and it works fast. It's almost done already. And when it is, you just wipe it up, neutralize it, and then I don't think I've mentioned this, over all the areas I've removed corrosion, I've been putting a Bowie Shield T9, which is it's paraffin wax basically, to help prevent corrosion from setting back in. And that 1-2 punch is working very well. Also a little bit of corrosion where the old grommet was. So while we wait for that to finish, let's take one last look and marvel at the engineering of this chassis. This is unusual for an off-brand. Off-brands generally are really cheaply made. Now, from what I know of the history of Majestic, from reading the Wikipedia article and other sources, they went bankrupt and their assets were liquidated right around when I believe this was made. And they kept making this for another year or two, so I'm not sure exactly who made this, but Wilcox Gay, who was based, I believe, out of Michigan, bought the assets of Majestic around 1949. Majestic had a plant, I think, in Elgin, Illinois, so this may have been made there, or it may have been made at the Wilcox Gay facility in Michigan. As for who designed it, I don't know, but it's different. It's very different from anything I've seen before. A lot of early TVs licensed technology from RCA, who patented a lot of stuff. So we have an RCA chassis lurking behind here from about the same year. So something like Admiral. There are Admiral used the same flyback, same horizontal output circuit, a lot of similarities. Something like this, they went off on their own, but it's really well made. Very heavy gauge steel, as thick or thicker than the RCA. Some really unusual circuit features, like why are the electrolytic capacitors mounted up front horizontally? Why is the flyback underneath the chassis with a little hinged trapdoor to get at the rectifier tube? But they even put some little ventilation holes for it. It's weird and interesting. The audio output tube is on a little sub-chassis. I don't know why, but it is. I've seen that on horizontal oscillators sometimes, and it will be on springs. And I'm sure that's to avoid vibration from the speaker, but this isn't. This is very solidly in place. This doesn't move. So why is this sunk down? I have no idea. Other than, did they need to provide a little bit of shielding around the base of this tube, which I believe is a 6K6, the audio output tube? Your guess is as good as mine. Weird, interesting set. I am also very, very glad that it worked. That it had some life on initial power-up and just required a basic recap and some new tubes, a little bit of tweaking to work properly, because I would have a very difficult time, I suspect, sourcing some of these parts. Some other unusual design features for a set this early. The vertical integrator is a couplate, a capacitor resistor network inside of a ceramic substrate rather than individual components. That's possibly the earliest instance I've seen of that. Also, the detector is a diode, a 1N64 germanium diode. I clipped the lead here because I was suspicious that it was bad early on in the project, but no, it tested good, so I took it back in. I got out my test pattern generator and adjusted the horizontal vertical linearity and height and width and such, and things are looking pretty good. So I am going to turn off this up before I get a copyright violation and put the chassis back in the cabinet. Here's the cabinet. Very basic construction, plywood, some perforated Masonite for the bottom to allow ventilation, and some type of fake leather type coating. It sort of looks like wood, it sort of looks like leather, it's not quite Tolex. I am going to go over with a damp rag and then apply some Gojo. This is fairly benign stuff when it comes to old surfaces. I tried using it on a somewhat similarly surfaced portable Motorola TV a few months ago, and it did a really nice job cleaning it up, so I have high hopes for this. There is one area, though, where there does appear to be some surface loss. We'll see what happens. I'm inclined to just leave it, but perhaps it could be touched up with stain or shoe polish or some such. A few decades of flavor country coming off this old surface, looking way better now. There are a few flecks of the usual white stuff, whether it's insect poop or paint flecks, I don't know. Maybe goof off could work, but I'm a little wary of using any solvents on this. Maybe I'll just try to pick it off with an X-Acto knife or something. And unfortunately there is a bubble up front where it's separated a bit. I guess I'll have to pull off the front again and try to glue that back down, which will give me a final opportunity to clean up the front as well. I did in a couple initial passes with some Novus number 2, but around this emblem and across the top I can see you could stand to have a little bit more cleaning. It's not worth getting this glass out. I took a brief attempt at it, but the way the push-on nuts are holding the glass on, I don't want to risk damaging anything, so I'll just do the best I can at getting into all the nooks and crannies and cleaning out all the gunk. I took the front off the cabinet again, and here's where that ripple is. I'll try to lift up this edge and flatten things out. While I've got it all taken apart, let's take a closer look at it. It's a tube chart. There is a built-in antenna on the top, made out of some metallic stuff with kind of a foam backing to it. We have this perforated Masonite bottom. They got caved in a bit. Now it does come off with screws, so I'm going to take this off and try to mash it back into shape. It got caved in and it won't go back into shape easily. I have to kind of ram it back the other way, and I'll try to glue this up. I want to retain as much as possible as I can of the original materials while preserving it for history. A little tag here about the using an internal antenna versus outdoor antenna. That's where the speaker goes. And there's some kind of shielding in this area. I think that's the tuner's on this side. It is not that cheaply made. It is 3/4 inch ply with some corner bracing. It's just cheap in terms of it's very basic. 3/4 ply for the corner blocks, and the bottom and the sides are 3/8 inch, I'd say. I'm working on cleaning up the speaker side of the cabinet now, and you know, this is actually in remarkably good condition considering this is a fairly fragile surface material, and this thing is, what, 5 years old? There's the very basic speaker grill. There are some little screws that were in here that hold the speaker in place. I popped them out while cleaning, and while doing so I gazed over at the back and realized, oh yeah, there is actually a little model label there. It tells you the various versions. So this would be the Leatherette 120. There's also a 121 mahogany and a 121B bleached, which would be, I guess, kind of a blonde mahogany, I'm guessing. Never seen either one of those, and very likely never will. But nice to at least have some record of that. Often these old sets are missing the back, or the backs are damaged. So again, this set is in remarkably good condition. I'm cleaning up the speaker side of the cabinet now and realizing that this is actually in really good condition. Just one minor nick down here, and that's it for a fairly fragile surface material. And considering this thing is 75 years old or so, not too bad, not too bad. And while cleaning this, I gazed over at the back and realized, hey, there's actually a little label that tells you about the various models. So this would be the 120 leatherette. Apparently there's also a 121 mahogany and a 121 bleached, which I'm guessing is kind of a blonde finish. I don't know, because I've never seen them, and very likely never will. And you know, that back is in actually remarkably good condition. Often backs are missing or damaged because they were taken off so the set could be serviced or tubes replaced and whatnot. But yeah, very nice. And over there we see another 12 LP4. The base came off, unfortunately. That I picked up at the same conference where I got this set. I picked up a parts chassis from a buddy of mine. It is also weak, but I'm going to try reattaching the base and rejuvenating that, and if it tests any better, I may install it before I put everything back together. If nothing else, the DAG coating is in much better shape. It's really flaking off badly on the CRT I'm using right now. I reattached the base to this old worn-out 12LP4. Actually, a fellow restorer gave me an entire Admiral chassis that he had, and I wasn't expecting this pitch tube to be any good, and well, it is not. It is not. I have it baking at about 7 volts on the filament, and this is with the cutoff maxed out. We're deep in the red, so I'll let it run a little bit longer. I'm not expecting any real improvement here, and then let's try the various rejuvenation functions. Because this is so worn out, and nothing to lose. Well, one thing that is curious, well, a couple things. I believe this is a rebuild. There's some notes on here. There is a noticeable seam right here where the neck would have been cut open and a new gun reinstalled. But what's curious, the CRT that's currently in the set, this portion, is baked. It's very discolored, whereas this looks nice and shiny, but this tests just as bad as the other. So interesting that it could be so worn out but no discoloration. Anyways, I'll grab a tripod and let's see if we can get this thing to work any better. I have the filament cranked up to 8 volts now, and hey, we're almost in the green. So if I used a brightener on this, which increases the filament voltage, it should produce a decent image. But let's see if we can use the rejuvenation functions to improve that. Now, there's a chart on the inside, a little quick thing where they tell you, based on your symptoms, what you should do. Now, we've got bad everything. So bad, they say one-shot rejuvenation, then auto cycle. So let's try that. So rejuvenation, well, first let's get the filament back down to 6.3. So you rotate this to the rejuvenation and you wait a bit. The filament starts glowing brighter and brighter because it is internally elevating the filament voltage. And then you push the button and you should see a flash inside the gun. Let's see if we can capture that. Alright, here we go. Yes, there was a little spark down there. And then they said auto cycle. What that does, it's similar to other testers where you just hold down a button and it elevates various voltages, but this does it automatically. And you hold down the button and you wait for the needle to move 3 times. Ideally, it increases each time. And if you look at the filament, it's really glowing away. And there's the third, and then we stop. And we wait for the filament to cool down because it is still blinding. And we check it. And hey, wow. But it's going to drop as that filament settles back down to 6.3 volts. Let's make sure it's where I've got it set. And cut off is squirrely, but yeah, I can get it to where it should be. And emissions, they're in the green now, but they're kind of dropping. And if I hit the life test, ideally the needle wouldn't move, and if I let go, the life test reduces the filament voltage to something like 4 volts. Hey, at 6.3 volts, we're in the green now. It's a hell of a lot better than it was. And it's better than the CRT that I've got in the set, so I am going to swap them, as well as was a much better exterior DAG coating, so we should get better high voltage filtering. How long will it last? I don't know. A day, a year? No idea. But hey, we've got something. Something in the good. I let this sit on the tester at 6.3 volts for about half an hour, and the emissions actually improved even more. So I'm going to install it. Went ahead and cleaned it up, glued the base. The only downside is when they rebuilt it, the type of gun they use, single ion trap magnet, versus the original, which used a dual, and that is standard for a 12 LP4 CRT. So the gun that they put in this is not the same as the gun that was in here originally, which means I can't use this nifty looking vintage ion trap magnet. Instead, I'll be going with this boring single type, but oh well. I'll give that a try. It might work, but I'm pretty sure this is the one that actually came with the CRT. Replacement picture tube works great. It's brighter, sharper, so I'm calling that done, and I was able to use the dual magnet type that came with it. In fact, I had trouble getting it with the single magnet type. I either had to have it all the way at the base or jammed up against the focus coil, so I'm not sure what this label is all about. And I'm just glad it's all back together and working very well now. Now attending to what I hope is the last major task before we can reassemble the set, and that is the damaged perforated Masonite bottom. It had been caved in pretty good. So what I'm doing now is something I've experimented with in the past and had some success, which is to massage the brakes back into place. Yeah, a little bit of flakes off here and there, but I think that's inevitable. Then soak some water in along the seams, and then mix in some tight bond wood glue. Put some plastic sheeting on either side, and then clamp the heck out of it with some pony clamps. I did this section last night, where you can see it's a little shiny. It's flattened out pretty good. It's strong along the seam. I'll do that here. I'm going to mop up the excess now. I don't want to leave glue in the holes there, and then do this section, and then got one major section to do down along through here. And so by clamping it, it's not only it's flattening it out, and the glue soaks into the fibers and reinforces things. It will be a little shiny. It's the nature of this wood glue, and especially when there's plastic against it. I could spray this with some matte lacquer or shellac or something like that, which actually isn't a bad idea anyways, or maybe even some polyurethane, because that will add some protection and make it waterproof. It beats taking a new sheet of Masonite and drilling a few hundred holes, that's for sure. I think that turned out quite well. Actually better than I expected, considering how damaged it was. So it's now strong. Wood glue really did a nice job repairing the brakes, and the clamping flattened it out nicely. Then I sprayed it with some matte acrylic clear to both knock down the brightness that the glue added in spots and kind of waterproof it. Yeah, it's the bottom. Nobody's ever going to see it. Who cares? But I know it's there, and I wanted to fix it up to the best of my ability. So let's see. I also picked up some new feet. Couldn't quite find some that were quite the same as the originals, but the dimensions are the same. Just couldn't get a good color match, but someday if I ever encounter some, I can pry these out and put some better ones in. But again, it's a minor thing that's underneath, but I do want to replace these because the felt has deteriorated. Alright, I think we have everything we need now, finally, to put this all back together. Finally, here it is, all back together and playing. Now remember, this is an early set, so you really have to watch it in dim lighting. It's not an illuminized picture tube. I have bright lights on now so you can get some sense of the cabinet. Now, earlier I was pondering what to do about the brass elements on this set. And originally they appeared to be treated or coated in some way. Now I was thinking chemical treatment, but I got a pointer from one of my viewers about another technique to do it with stain, and I did jog my memory. Yeah, that's right. You can do it with stain and clear coated, or use toner lacquer. So rather than applying a chemical to darken the brass, you can spray on a lacquer with stain built into it, or wipe some type of stain on it, and then you want to clear coat it so it won't tarnish. That's very likely what they did, rather than use acid or something like that. So I will endeavor to do that, but I'm going to do that a bit later when it's warmer out, because it's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, and I just can't do lacquer. And I want to do it very carefully, because you kind of only have one chance to get it right. If I have to use lacquer thinner to get it off, it'll probably take this recessed paint off with it. Anyways, it's a long time coming, but I'm happy with the end results. As usual, the harsh lettering at the bottom is messing things up a bit. See if we can find something else to look at. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. There we go. I'll give you another look at the cabinet before we wrap this up. Here's all that big leg goodness. It does show fingerprints. I've polished just a few times, but during reassembly I got some splotches on it, so when I put it in its final resting place, I'll do one final go over. For the cabinet, after a good cleaning, I went over it with Howard's Restore Finish Mahogany to give a little bit of color back into it, especially on top. It was faded. And then I used Howard's Feed-In Wax, this stuff, beeswax and orange oil to go over it, which really brought it back to life. It's looking a whole lot better than when I started. There are some dings here and there, but so be it. It is pretty old. That's going to be it. It was an interesting project. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. That is a wrap for the Majestic 120 restoration project.